Okay, it is time for us to start our week number 8 lecture, and had to move it up a little early today because of the graduation this evening that I have to attend for the campuses here in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and get started right away. And it won't last probably an hour, but I will go over the assignments and everything. Okay, reminding you that we have one more lecture that takes place, week 10. Week 10, we will return to our regular time. Okay, and let's take a look at the 8th week, which we're in now. 8 steps to writing a police report. And to prepare for that, you'll read Reported in Writing, Sections 1, Parts A through O, and Section 5, Part A. Also, the section Writing Police Reports and the 6 questions, which we're going to talk about. And it does say that the lecture would take place tonight, but obviously it's not. And then our discussion post, the Why Police Report, many of you have done pretty well with that. The initial post was due on Tuesday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, and your reply posts are due Saturday, this Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Finally, complete the written assignment project, rough draft, police report on crime incident. I did send back to you with comments about your field notes to make sure that you brushed up your field notes and paid attention to things that you're going to need to complete your rough draft. And so I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. And then my motto at the end, I've shared with you what that is all about. So now let's keep going. Take a look at the calendar. Okay, and as soon as it populates, here we go. Your reading assignment, your initial post due the 22nd, your lecture taking place now at a different time, reply post, and then your rough draft. Very important that you get your rough draft completed on time so that I can grade it and get it back to you with the comments about what you need to do. So now let's go right to week 8. Again, your assignments, discussion, which we've already covered, and your rough draft. Okay, now, so it's time for you to turn in your rough draft. You should have already worked on the first part of it, your front sheet, earlier that I discussed with you. And so now, it says, though police reports differ according to the department, there's a format form that was given in week 7 that you needed to use. Just to go back to week 7 to show you what I'm talking about. It is down here. This is the report. This is what you need to do using your field notes, and you need to use this format. Very, very, very important. Very important. Sometimes students give me a straight Word document, and it doesn't contain that. So give me a second here. Let me go back to here is what it looks like, the front sheet. So you're going to fill in the information, and then you're going to start to fill in the information here. In terms of saying victims, suspects, all the way through to complete things. Student, if someone has asked me already, do you just fill in the report without the suspects and witnesses? No, you're going to do the complete report as if it's a final draft. And then your all-important narrative section, you don't have to break it down by saying who, what, when, where, how, why. But you're going to include that in your narrative. Chronological, must be in chronological order. Then you're going to have a conclusion, a recommendation, and final disposition. Now, that's the format that you're using. So I'm going to get out of that. Okay, let's get out of that. And then let's go back to our week 8. Okay, so back to assignments again for this week. So format your police report. The front sheet, first part of your police report form, it asks objective questions, which you'll fill in the information, which I pointed out to you as you recorded them in your field notes. That's why it was important that I told most of you to go back and take a look at the facts from week 5. Then we get to the biggest part here, your narrative. Ask you to write in your narrative in chronological order, as a police officer would write what happened and what you observed and discovered. And it is very, 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 very important that you do that. Now, one of the things that before I get into this, is that when you do the front sheet of your report, make very sure that you've taken time to do the chain of custody. Chain of custody is very important. Chain of custody is a written version of your evidence that you recovered at the scene. You're also going to make sure that you protect that evidence by indicating in your report what you did with that evidence. You're going to also report the fact that you probably initialed it, tagged it, and put it in a bag or did something. If it's something like a weapon or a piece of hair or something, if you collected blood samples, you're going to indicate that you collected them. You're going to say where you collected them and all those different things. So it's very important that when you do the collection of the information, that you do complete that, because that chain is going to be very important, because when you get finished with it, you're going to do something with it, and you're going to have to record all of that information in there. So I wanted to make sure I gave that. Then as far as suspects are concerned, if there is no suspect, say that there's no suspect. Eliminate the section on suspects and put it in your conclusion, final disposition recommendation section, which is the same, that there is no suspect, and then that the investigation is continuing. Those kinds of things, very, very, very important. If there's only one witness, don't put witness number 2 or 3 in there. If there is a victim and there's only one victim, don't put victim number 2 or 3 in there. I don't want to see any sections that are not providing information, and don't make up information as far as that's concerned, except you can make up the information about the badge number and things of that nature. But when it gets to talking about victims and witnesses and suspects, that's going to be determined not from something that you made up, but that's going to be determined from the information from the 5th week field report stuff that you completed. Very, 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 very important. So now the narrative section, which is the part that is really the biggest part, not to say that all of it is not important, but the biggest part is make sure that you write your narrative in chronological order. Now, you can do your narrative in single space, but make sure that you do it in paragraphs because it's easier to follow. I've seen some narratives that are one big huge paragraph, and it's hard to follow. So you want to break it down into paragraphs. And so you're going to deal with answering each of these questions. Who, and I already said that. Victims, suspects, witnesses, and any relevant behavior. That's the who of the report. Very important. What? The details of the crime. As the evidence, as evidence could stand in a trial. Description between communication between you and others that gets to the truth. Include key quotes from interviews. Someone told you something or said something. Again, you're going to gather this information from your incident report. When did you arrive there? And the timing that events took place of the crime that you gathered or obtained information from. And again, the key thing is you want to do this again chronologically. Where? All locations that are relevant to the crime. How the offense was committed based on the information that you determined, and also it's included in your scenario. And then why? Now, why, we've already discussed why this week in terms of your assignment here, discussion post, but why is important because it deals with motive as far as you can speculate. Now, this is the only time they says you can make an intelligent guess. Now, what I want to do is tell you this, is try to make sure that the guess has to do with the information and details that you discovered from your investigation, not some hot shot experience that you feel like in your mind. You know, you're not Karnak. I might be saying Karnak. You might not know what I'm talking about. There was a character that Johnny Carson used to do on the Tonight Show years ago. He used to wear a turban, and he would put a card up to his head and say what that card said, and then he'd be right because, well, he knew what it was. But anyway, we're not mind reading in those kinds of situations. We're not trying to do that. But make sure that you refrain from throwing things in there, because the reason why, if you throw things in there that don't fit the information that you gathered in the investigation, then you're going to be questioned about that on the stand, possibly in court. And you don't want to be caught in a situation where you get stuck and embarrassed. So those are the main things for the narrative section. Conclusion, report on how your visit to the crime scene ended, was an arrest made, what recommendations, and so forth, so on. That's going to be in the final disposition section or the conclusion. This is a rough draft, and it says what I'm going to be doing. I will review your work, provide you feedback in time for you to do your final draft. That'll be due week 10, not due next week, but week 10. And be sure to proofread everything for accuracy, grammar, spelling, and other mechanics. We already talked about that during this course, about the importance of grammar and spelling. So, and then your rough draft will be submitted according to the way that you had to do it before. Include a cover sheet on top of it as well. So now let's get more into any questions about the rough draft?
Just so I'm understanding you right, Richard, you said to delete any of the sections that we don't need. Does that include like the suspect or witness's driver's license?
Well, if there's no suspect, you're not going to have driver's license for a suspect.
Right, but I mean, like it's got in the section for the victim where it wants to know their driver's license, and I don't have that information. So should I just delete?
No, you can make that information up. That information you can make up. Stuff like that you can make up. Okay. If you have that information, if you want to, you can make that information up. That's okay. The information that, as far as what the biggest part of the statements of the section is the statements or the information you gather from conversing with those individuals, whether it's a suspect and so forth and so on, or you're told the name of an individual who might have committed the offense. I'm not going to tip because the facts tell whether or not that took place or not, but you're not going to make those things up. So information that's objective information, such as the height and weight and stuff like that, unless you see something in their fact pattern, I don't care about that kind of stuff. I'm more concerned about the actual statements that witnesses are going to give you, suspects and victims. That's the biggest part there that's going to come from your field report. Okay?
Perfect.
Got it?
Yeah, thanks.
Huh?
Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Now, the thing that I do want to make sure that you understand, and I keep saying this all the time, is if there is no suspect, I don't even need to see the information. I don't need to see that in your template. It's a Word document, so you can remove it and skip it. But if there is a suspect, I want to see the information. If there's only one suspect, don't leave a blank section for suspect number 2. So the key thing is that the information is there like other forms that you might have that say, for example, answer the questions, and then you'll have 1, 2, okay, in 3, if there's no 3, then you'll eliminate that from whatever you're writing and that kind of thing. So the key thing is that I wanted your report to be clean, and I've had some drafts that come back so very well that they are good for finals, but I point out to the students just to double check and make sure that they haven't missed anything, and then submit their final draft. I actually had some students who were able to submit their finals as the same as their draft, and it says rough draft. Now, the final draft is really the final report. And draft really shouldn't be in there, but it's okay, because draft leads people to believe that it's something that you submitted that's not the final document. No, the project in week 10 will be the final one. There's only one rough draft. There's no 2 rough drafts involved. Okay? All right, let's go back to what I was going to take you to next. So I'm going to show you something in just a few minutes, but first I want to go do this. I did provide you with an article early on, and early on in this, it gave you some tips about writing police reports. Do you remember that, or do you have that, Matt?
Sorry, I've got too many mute buttons. Yeah, I still have it. Yep.
Okay, good. So this is when you need it. But I gave it to you guys earlier because I wanted to make sure that you had that document. It actually breaks down in detail from a professional perspective what I am talking about. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's talk about writing the actual police report again. As I have kind of said already, covered it, but I just want to go over it again here. It says police reports must be easily understood and very important that they be able to be read by a person so they can get a perspective of what you saw or what happened in the investigation that led up to the charges or what took place. In this case here, there may be charges, there may not be charges. Charges are not something that you determine, because that's the prosecutor who determines that. But what you do is you gather the information that's necessary to help them make that decision. And say, most of what you write will be used to make judgments and decisions. You'll have to prepare logs, field notes, administrative reports, operation reports, memorandums, policies, and procedures, and more. So you've already had to do your field notes. Now be aware of this, and this is what I keep telling students to remember. Your field notes don't have to be included in this. I don't want to see your field notes attached. There are students that will resubmit their field notes. I don't want to see them because I'm not going to read them all over again. I'm going to go right to your draft. But that's for you. But remember this, and this is what I tell students, consistency, because in an actual case, the field notes can be subpoenaed along with any logs and any other reports that are submitted in court. In this class, we don't have anything else other than the field notes that are going to be preceding the actual report. Of course, in this course, you're doing a draft, but the final document would be the one that would be subpoenaed in court generally, because most of the time reports, now most of the departments I know of don't have you to do more than one draft, because that indicates that there may be something wrong, and then you could be questioned in court about why did you leave this out from your report that you include in your field notes, and those kinds of things. And they'll ask you what's important, and then you say, oh yeah, I made a mistake, or either I intended to. As soon as you get that way in front of them, think about it. You're sitting there on the witness stand. The judge or the jury, most of the time the jury, will be looking at you and they'll say, this person doesn't know what they're doing. Again, you're looking unprofessional, and you look like you didn't do a good job here, and that actually could damage the investigation, or damage, in this case, the prosecutor's case. Some of the reports you write will become official court documents, such as the reports, arrest reports. We're not dealing with precinct investigations or traffic citations and so forth. But what we're saying is that, remember, it is important that you recognize that what you put down in these reports will follow the next report or the next phase of it. And there has to be some consistency in there, okay? Rules to remember when writing a report. And these are things that you're going to think about as you're doing this one. Accuracy, brevity, and clarity. Again, very important. ABC, we call it. Accuracy, brevity, and clarity. Record incidents chronologically. I've already said that. Because remember, the person that reads the report had not been there, and they're going to be relying on you to provide details about what you discovered. Only the facts. Only the facts. The facts are very, very, very important. That's why I said you get into the part about the motive, and there's some speculation. Oftentimes, you can get motive from one of the witnesses, or the victim might say it, and sometimes even the suspect gives it as well, and that's very important. And when it's not the suspect, but when it's the victim or one of the witnesses, it tends to guide the direction of the report or not the report, that the investigation will go. So the facts are so important, because remember what the case is going to be based upon. It's going to be based upon the facts, the evidence based on, and if it's something that's not factual, then it's going to be a problem. Let's say, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say the individual had on a red shirt, like I got on, and then you write in your report, your field notes, they had a red shirt on, and then you get to your report, and then you say, oh, they had a yellow shirt on. So that's why it's important for your field notes to be accurate. But the point of the matter is that let's say it's a red shirt, but in reality, the dude was wearing a green or another color shirt. Well, then you got some problems of identification there that are in the report that will follow you and create an opening for the defense to use. And again, very, very important that you get the facts, okay? Include everything that is pertinent to the case. You want to, like I said again, list the evidence that's recovered. You want to make very sure that you have you've done the details of the collection of the evidence. I'm going to share something with you guys at the end from another class that I have that I teach that involves the chain of custody, and it's very important. But I'm going to add it into this. I haven't done it before, but I'm going to add it at the end, and you'll see what I'm talking about, explaining why the chain of custody is important. Submit your work, proof your work rather, before you submit it. And if you don't, once again, you'll have some problems there. Accuracy may be there, and it's too late to correct it once it's in the report. Understand and follow the format. I already took you to that from week 7. All reports should be detailed and complete. Now, 6 questions again. Now, this right here provides a sample police narrative. Now, I'll show you it, but I'm going to show you why I don't like it. You'll probably already be able to figure it when you see it. Okay. It's 1 paragraph. And it might need to be in this case, but paragraphs are easier to follow if they're broken down, and some of it might continue, but there are some things that could be changed here. Let's see if I can. Now, it's easier to follow just that way, but make sure you break it off in the proper place. Okay, see now, all this information, some of this you can keep on. Let's see, Okay, here we go here. So now it's easier to read these things, and it's kept in the different. So that's what I don't like. I tell students all the time, make sure that you don't write it in one simple paragraph. So it says I don't want to save this. Okay, now let's get back to what I'm going to talk about, the essence. Every report must answer these 6 key questions. And again, it elaborates more in detail on what I talked about a few minutes ago. Who? The who is the complainant, victims, witnesses, suspects, other agencies that may be involved, such as paramedics, fire department, so forth, so on. Once again, you have to determine, what information you gathered from them. And then details of the crime, what happened, What's the evidence that supports that? What agencies responded? And then, if it's just you and your partner, or it's just you, that particular point in the report, then fine. Who took over after that, if you have that information? Again, that would be in our fact pattern if we have it in there. Date and time of the incident. When did you contact the victims? Did you contact the witnesses? At 0100 hours, John Doe came to me and told me blah, 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 and then so forth and so on. And then the next person. When was the suspect apprehended? That may not have taken place. You don't have to have that if there's no suspect. You can't say, there was no suspect apprehended because there was no suspect. I don't want to see that in the when, because that's you're going to, again, put that at the very end. Remember, right now I'm just talking about the narrative section. Where did the offense take place? Where were the victims? Where were the witnesses? Where was the suspect? You see, now it says as applicable. You should have put that up here. If as applicable or applicable, however you want to say it. How was the crime committed? Was there a weapon used? Was a vehicle, stolen credit card, so forth, so on. You want the particulars. How was the crime reported? Those kinds of things. Right? And then why? Notice this, how they do it. Why and what was the motive? What was the motive? What was the motive? And for some of you in discussions, you said why doesn't involve motive? Yes, it does. Motive is the real deal. But the only question where you have some guesswork, but it should be based on the facts. Remember, I said that. Don't try to, be Karnak or a fortune teller there in those scenarios. So those are the 6 questions that are so important. Now, any questions about the narrative section?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, excellent. Now, let's go. I want to go and visit. We'll go on a field trip here, so as I can move you down there. Let's go to this. Let's go and you'll see something. These are all the classes I'm teaching. So, yeah, you see, it's why I'm busy. Okay. So this quarter, I am teaching this course. Now I think, let's see, I think it's week 6. I think it's week 6 that it's located in. I'm going to make sure that it's there. Let's go and see. Yeah, here we go. Here's a little exercise here. And this one is this is a very interesting one. You're called to the crime scene. You set up a reliable chain of custody. In this case here, chain of custody refers to the steps you take to ensure that the evidence is safe and does not change until trial. It involves documenting the evidence and its location at the time of the final disposition. Now, this one, okay, here's the hypothetical. This has nothing to do with the facts of one you're doing, but this is showing you these are the facts that this person faced. You and your newly hired deputy arrive at the scene with a search warrant, and as officer, you're in charge. You're responsible for setting up a chain of custody for any evidence collected. So where do you start? Now, I'm not going to go over the details of it, but I'm going to show you. So anyway, first of all, your new deputy and the importance of chain of custody. Chain of custody is a process used to maintain and document the accuracy of the evidence, the chronologic evidence, the hazard risk relating. So what is it used for? Show you what happens here if you move the wrong one. You put this one in there. Here it is. Not. So people might say that. So it's not accuracy of the evidence. It's actually this one. And it's for the chronological history of the evidence. So as you gathered, it's not the hazard risk, but that's the importance. Chronological history of evidence. Okay. Deputy asked, okay, I get it. Can you tell me exactly what is the purpose for the chain of custody? And the response is the whole purpose of the chain of custody is to make sure that the condition of the evidence remains blank from the date of collection. Without the chain of custody, someone might tamper with it. So what do you think is the answer? Just
keep it unchanged.
There we go. You got it. Up to date somebody might say, oh, up to date. Wrong. It's unchanged. Yes. And integrity, that's the word I always use. So now you begin to get a feel. Now, it says, you open the closet door and this body falls out and you begin careful collection of evidence and chain of custody. Now, this one, I might not go into details with it, but it'll show you. Here's one that I'm not going to spend a lot of time with, but I will tell you that you want to move your mouse over the right answers. Now, usually whenever I do this one, I get some of them off. But you begin to say, what do? Record fingerprints first, visual exam of the crime scene, document location of the evidence, collect blood evidence, secure the site, release of the crime scene, store a gun in a paper bag, note deputy removes bullets from the gun, labels on the evidence, or cocaine in the matter. So it tells you which one that you want to do first. And usually you want to start with the stuff that will dissipate first, such as the blood evidence. And then you go on from there. I'm not going to, again, go through and check these answers because if you put the wrong ones in, like, for example, some students will say, okay, secure the crime scene, okay, that might be 10. Okay, you're going to put labels on the evidence. You're going to put, and so I'm just showing you, these are the things that you're going to consider. And I want you to make sure that, I'm not going to be so concerned about proper order when you do it, but if you begin to look at this and go into it, you'll see. So anyway, I'm just going to check a few of my answers. I know what it's going to say. It's not going to give me the thing because I didn't do the full thing. But those are the things that you're looking for. You're just about done. So you've done those things that were said. You've done the chain. But you work with your deputy to make sure that the different kinds of evidence are collected properly. If they aren't, the chain of custody is broken. Roll over each type of evidence. Now, this is where you begin to see something that I want to tell you specifically. Roll over each type of evidence for more information on collecting procedures. Okay, so now, to maintain chain of custody, you must collect all suspicious documents to be examined later. Never change a document, either with creases or marks. Seal documents in plastic or cellophane envelopes so you can see them. Using standard fingerprint procedures must be gathered first before other evidence, because that can change because you start to touch stuff and all that. Gather all fingerprints first because it's fragile and could be lost. In the case of weapons, here's something that, and it would have been in there, is that remove the bullets. Make sure you include that in your chain of custody if there's a firearm that you discover. Once again, talking about our assignment that we're doing. I'm not going to tell you whether or not it's in there or not, but you should know the answer to that question. Be sure that the firearm is safe, remove the bullets, and then put them in a paper bag envelopes, separate from the bullets. All actions must be recorded to create the paper chain of custody. I removed the bullets, I placed them in, in a bag or something. And you know what? You're going to have some gloves or something on, because you don't want your prints to be on the bullets, and you definitely don't want your prints on the gun. Okay, and then this evidence here, this is kind of funny. When I looked at this, I saw that. I said, okay, the proper procedure for collecting cocaine is to store it in a paper envelope. The envelope must be sealed thoroughly to prevent. And this is what usually is used to do it, a razor blade. You've probably seen this before. But one thing that you do not do, I remember when I was in the academy, we laughed about it. When trying to determine if a substance is cocaine or whatever, you've seen movies where they put their finger in or pinky or something, and they put it up on their tip of their tongue. Have you seen that, Matt? Have you seen that before?
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do that, because for obvious reasons. First of all, number one, okay, officer, why is cocaine in your system? Well, I've been doing this for years. I've been facing it, So when you become an addict yourself. But the point of the matter is that that's not good. That's not a good thing. And you're not an accurate tester. Let the lab determine whether or not it is. If it's sugar, powdered sugar, okay, don't, you know the taste of powdered sugar in that. But don't, please don't. That is not the proper way. So it says put it in a plastic bag, okay, and seal it. So, and then make sure you tag it now. Make sure you tag these items. Okay, now you really need to rush the evidence to the crime lab, especially the blood samples, which need to be refrigerated. But make sure you are building a solid chain of custody, and you take one more look at your evidence. So I'm going to show you something. Roll your mouse over each number, and you can't. I'm doing it for you, to see all the details required on the label attached to each bit of evidence. So let's look at number 1. Describe the evidence, what it is, the case number. If you have a case number, put that on there because it's going to be going in a place where it's going to be evidence from all places, other cases. The date and location where the evidence was collected. That's where students, I always remind them in their chain of custody. Make sure you have that. The name of the individual who gathered the evidence. If it was you, your name should be on there. And any other identifying information, such as the brand or product and so forth. So these are things that students forget. So now, good work. Now you have a basic understanding of the chain of custody, often called the chain of evidence. Without a solid chain of custody, you have difficulty in convicting the person who committed a crime. And this little blurb here is really appropriate. It says Amanda Dolak, and I'll read it out loud because it's kind of small print. Even if officers find a defendant's bloody fingerprints all over the scene, all this compelling evidence is useless in a court of law if the police don't establish a proper chain of custody. Very, 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 very important. And that's what else? So these are the things that count at the crime scene. Again, this helps their awareness of hazards, proper safety. And this is not necessarily for your report, and it could, but it's a mindset that you're thinking of when you're in your field. Proper safety procedures, evidence collection, first techniques, transportation techniques, and then, of course, building the chain of custody. So this is from a course that I teach called Criminal Evidence. Actually, just so you'll see, one of the assignment that the student had to do was a crime scene matrix, but the other thing that they had to do was this, and this is what I was talking about. In a 2 or 3 page report, they had to write a detailed description of the crime scene and maintain the chain of custody. So we focus on it quite a bit, and we get into it when you get into a course like that. So I think that information clarifies the importance of chain of custody. Do you have any questions about chain of custody now?
No, I don't have any.
So understand why it is so important in your report. There are students, and they look at that and they see. I'm gonna go back to our class now. Get back in there. Go back to the class I'm teaching. See, I taught it in spring too. I'm gonna not be teaching this in the next course because they're revising it. They're changing it to a different course, but it's gonna have the same stuff in there. What I wanted to show you was this. I'm going back to looking at this. I'm gonna go back to the template. So going down here, what we just talked about a few minutes ago fits right here. There we go. The evidence information, types of information collected, then chain of custody explained. That is what I'm talking about. But the types of evidence collected, okay, blood, whatever, guns, weapons, cameras, what have you, those kinds of things. That's where this is going to be important in the report. But chain of custody is critical because of what I just shared with you a few minutes ago. So, and that's all I got for today. Any questions?
No, I think we're pretty good.
Okay. So, well, glad you took the time to come to it earlier today. I hesitated at first. I was going to do an archive from the spring, but I said, you know what? No, I want to add this section for chronological, not the chronological, but for chain of custody clarification, because I'm always trying to nail that into students. So it is going to be real important that students look at this to help them with their reports, especially with the chain of custody, because you get ding points if you don't get that, because like I said again, what's very important to me is the narrative section. That is the biggest portion. I say probably if I weigh your grade, I think it's probably a good 80%, 85%, close to 90% of your grade is based on that. And then the other important thing there is probably, I'd say probably 80. And then probably another 10% is that chain of custody. And then the other 10% encompasses the other information that's in there. But make sure that you cover all of the issues from your field reports. Because I go back and I look at your field notes and I say, okay, this wasn't included. However, because of the fact that, in all due respect, I give you guys a break on that because there's some stuff that you didn't put in your field report when you turned it in to me. But there are things from the facts. I know the facts. I know them by heart now because I've taught this course so long. I hate to see them revised. I hope they take some of these facts and take them over because of the fact that when I read these things, I know exactly what I'm looking for. And those are the things that are going to be very, very, very important. All of the facts are involved. Did you leave a critical fact out from your crime scene that you should have included from your observation? Let's go back. Just again, I know this is going a little longer, but I want to. I do want to make sure that we're good here. Okay, let's go back here. Where your field notes came about. Okay, so let's say this. Your project is probably divided pretty close into thirds. The scenario was first third. The second third is the draft, and then the final third is the final paper. So anyway, you had a sample field notes, but let's look at what the crime scene scenario. This is what you base your field notes on. Okay, so now there are things that are not there, like your name, your badge number, your department. Okay, you put that in there. But then there are certain things that you already have in here. This is the scenario laid out. And it gives the names of some people in there. And it tells you things that I'm not going to tip. And it's quite a bit of information. It's 2 pages. So if you give me your field notes and you give me your scenario, your final narrative, and it's brief, then I'm probably going to have a problem. Your field notes, like I said again, should contain these things here. We already passed that. I'm just showing you how, now you get the picture, and this is what I was trying to say in week 5, is we didn't do a lecture in week 5, but I talked about it in week 4, and I talked about it in week 6. Make sure that you get, look at it, the date and time, call, officers who responded, address, details about the route that the suspect could have taken, if any, evidence tagged at disposition. We're getting back to the chain of custody issue. Information relating to what photographs, if any, were taken. All facts with details obtained. All statements with details obtained. Complete identification of any suspects, if any. Complete identification of suspect's vehicle, if any. Further information that is relevant to the case. And then, like I said again, here is a sample of field notes, what they looked like. And again, that's not the one that I just read to you, but they're just showing you kind of, and many of you did do this, your bullet points, but yours had to be more in detail than this. This is just a sample of it, and notice how it covers all the points that I just talked about a few minutes ago. That is, I'm trying to show you why I harped on reviewing the facts before you didn't have a chance to do that before the written assignment, but you have a chance to do it after the written assignment for purposes of completing your draft and final reports. Because there's stuff there that there's enough, all the information that you need is pretty much given, and then when you get ready to do the report, there's some stuff in there that wasn't given, and you can just fill that in. I don't care about that information. Like you asked about driver's license and stuff like that. If that's not included in there, you can submit that. And, you know, the only reason you want driver's license is for identification purposes. So you can make sure that John Doe is really John Doe. John Doe, you have some ID, you know, and you want to write that included in there. So that it might have been somebody else that said they were John Doe, and they were not John Doe. So, okay, that's about it. So I'm going to say good afternoon and go forth and complete this. I got another session I got to do in a minute. It's actually a faculty meeting, starts at 1 o'clock. So I'm going to say good afternoon, Matt, and thanks for coming out today.
Have a good afternoon.
All right. Bye-bye.